Hey Ted, how are you?
Hello, Jen. How you been?
Good, good. How about you?
Keeping busy. Never a dull moment.
So anyway, let's give you the official welcome. So today on BeerNet Radio, we have Ted Whitney, who many of you all will know from the craft industry. He's a craft industry vet, and now you are head of sales for Rexis or Squared.
For Rexis.
Rexis. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Which sells D9 THC drinks called Squared, correct?
Yes. Yeah, we produce those drinks, and we're kind of figuring out the corporate structure. The idea was to have Squared just be kind of a showcase for technology, and now it's, I think, the best brand in the space.
Right, right. And that space being the D9 THC hemp-derived drinks.
Yes, Hemp D9, we're calling it.
Okay, yeah, we're still, I think, all wrapping our brain around it, the regulation, the legalities, how it's coming to market. And I think there was just some new news this week where Chicago is starting to really jump into this more with regular retailers selling these, like in Total Wine in Minnesota that has, taken these beverages on too. So welcome, Ted. We're just gonna interrogate you for the next 30 minutes or so. You're gonna tell us everything, right?
Awesome. That gets me right up to lunch. This sounds perfect.
Right. Well, just in your own words, right? You left the beer industry a few years ago. Wasn't for this company, right? It was elsewhere in cannabis.
Yep. Yeah, I started off in the regulated side in California with a company called Nug.
Cool. And how did that go? And bring us up to speed to now.
It was a hoot. I got robbed a lot. It was crazy, to be honest. 2018 was a hell of a year for cannabis, and I mean, people always talk about the grass being greener. The
Right.
grass was not greener. I got into craft beer because I saw people expressing passion, people who didn't have access to better options with flavors or well-produced products, and I thought, holy cow, I can make a career out of aligning people with this beverage that I absolutely love. This is going to be great. And by 2018, I don't want to say we jumped the shark, but we definitely put a hazy IPA in his mouth and just wished him the best. It was a different craft beer industry, and I thought it might be fun to look to somewhere that has exciting growth, and I saw that in cannabis.
Right, right, right.
So it was right when recreational weed was hitting the mainstream in California. We had a vertically integrated grower. We were opening up retail stores. We were selling weed all over the state to, back then, there were about 900 licensed accounts, and like almost 400 of them were actually paying bills. So
Hmm.
we had our marketplace all delineated. I got that rolling, and well, the cannabis market just kind of imploded on itself because of regulations. For
Hmm.
me, that was a really valuable lesson. What I learned is that regulators don't really know what they're talking about. They really need guidance from the industry. They need guidance from the public. And I'm hoping that I can put all those lessons together from years in craft beer, from years in cannabis, into creating this new category. And we can get hemp D9 beverages available to everybody who wants better options for recreation and relief.
How legal is D9? I know like it's legal in Texas because it's hemp derived, I guess. Can
Yep.
you, maybe I missed it. This is Harry, by the way. Nice to
Hey,
meet you,
Harry.
Ted. Sorry I'm
Nice
late.
to you.
I've
No,
been
you're
out
fine.
sheep. I've been out herding sheep out in the back. So, it's weird because it's D9. Or it's derived by hemp. It's legal in some places, but regular THC is legal in other. Can you kind of give us a rundown of what that's all about?
Harry, I'm going to let you in on a secret that almost no one knows right now.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Is THC is THC, and hemp is just weed, just like cannabis. It's all the same plant. It's just some of it has less or some of it has more THC in it. And you can vary that with different cultivars. You can change the amount of THC the plant's expressing. The big issue came in 2018 when they legalized hemp, and THC naturally occurs inside of hemp. So what do? You've got this cash crop that may or may not be legal when it grows. It could pop hot for THC, and do you have to burn your entire crop? No one's going to want to grow it. So now they have
Right.
to legalize THC to 0.3% by dry weight. That's what we wrote into the farm bill. That's what's federally legal. So now we have this federally legal pile of THC. 0.3% by dry weight out of a billion tons of hemp is an awful lot of THC. So what do we do with it? That's what we're working out right now. It's been 3 years since a lot of this really kind of hit the fan, and we're only just figuring out how to get all these products to market. Can we sell Delta 9 legally? We absolutely can. There's nothing that says it's illegal. And we're working with state legislators to get this completely clarified in the laws. So I think that we've done a great job in Minnesota, where we've created a taxation scheme. We've created a marketplace where we can legally sell these drinks and retailers know exactly how to deal with them. The same laws exist in almost every other state. In fact, the only state that explicitly forbids this is Idaho. Everybody else is cool with it to one level or another. And we're working with groups like the Hemp Beverage Alliance, with the other producers inside of this space to write better legislation and open the marketplace up for everybody.
My private Idaho, who knew? But I mean, there's like 12 people there, so it doesn't matter.
And they can go
hey,
either
just
direction
kidding.
12 miles and get plenty of weed. They're fine.
There you go. Right.
I can already see in the comments, I'm from Idaho. No, but I mean, that clears it up, because I think probably if you polled Texas state legislators, probably 90% of them don't even know that you can get hemp derived.
Harry, you know there's a registration process in the state of Texas? Retailers can register with the state to sell industrial hemp. And I mean, they built the whole thing in. There's a tax program for it. You get an okay from the state. The Department of Health and Department of Agriculture have worked together to create this new department. And they've got some of the best oversight in the country for the category.
Well, we need to get HEB and get HEB license, and let's roll.
I'm pushing on specs first. Specs, we got to make this happen. Or I'll do HEB. Whoever wants to party.
Yeah, they're Baptists at HEB. They might be the last people, but I think Specs is probably your best. They're pretty proactive. Great guys.
And weed. That's a slam dunk.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Great guys. Okay, I'm sorry to interject. I just wanted to clear that up, and because I think you're right. I think this is could be a huge category. We had Austin Sawyer on the last podcast, and he's like, the way it's going right now, distributors are either a hard no or a hard yes on THC, and there's no gray area in between. And I think we're going to get more and more people saying hard, especially if we can get the feds to figure out what they're going to do. So y'all go ahead with the interview. I want to listen, because this is fascinating.
Well, you mentioned the distributors, hard yes or hard no. Ted, you said you guys are in almost 9 states and mostly through beer wholesalers, right?
Almost entirely. It's the people I know. It's the staffs that I love. And these are exactly the brand builders that we need to be working with in these markets.
Right. So what are you guys seeing can you tell us which states you're in, and what are the trends? Like, how much are you guys selling?
Yeah, we're in Massachusetts, Tennessee, South Dakota, just about to open Nebraska, about to open Minnesota, Illinois, Ohio. Pennsylvania should come back online here shortly, North Carolina, and I know I skipped a couple.
You were mentioning possibly New York?
We've been in New York, so we are still on shelves in New York. They just passed legislation limiting us to 1 milligram of THC per package. So we've reformulated, and we'll have a new product out there shortly. But as of this morning, we can still legally sell there. They don't have a date on when this all shuts down.
Well, if you drink 10 of them, you'll be fine.
It's very cost effective.
That's how we boost depletions, Harry.
That's one way to get your depletions up, right?
Right. And well, the margins are pretty darn good on this product, right? So I assume that's part of what's enticing wholesalers.
Yeah, well, we did that kind of by design. Inherently, the product's not terribly expensive. The medication is actually the least expensive part of the entire package. Our can is 3 times more expensive than the weed that we put inside there. It's such a small amount. 5 milligrams is a really small dose. But we want it to be something that everybody can drink, can enjoy, and can recreate with. We really pride ourselves on creating a product that feels a lot like you're drinking a beer. And that's really, it's core to our technology.
Yeah. And how close to the beer industry is this developing industry? How like the beer industry, would you say?
Very similar people, very similar retailers. The legislation is bananas. It reminds me of beer in like 2003. Remember when they had ABV caps in different markets, and they were always arbitrary and weird, and you just had to know that you can't drink a 6% alcohol beer in Ohio.
In Texas, if it was over 5% in Texas, you had to call it an ale. Even if it was a lager, you had to call it an ale just for years. It was crazy.
I remember you had to go with Texas testing too, because their labs were always wrong. So we finally just gave up, and we'd send our labels to Texas and say, just tell us what's in it. And then something wrong, and we print it anyway.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but all those pop the cap initiatives that we organized inside of the beer world, and we actually got the laws changed. That's exactly what we're doing now. We're not so much changing laws as much as clarifying them. And I think it's helpful to everybody. In Minnesota, we raised $984,000 in October selling hemp beverages. And that's just the start of it. I mean, that's a market of 3.5 million people, maybe.
My big question for you, Ted, is what happens to hemp-derived THC beverages if marijuana becomes federally legal? Is there, I guess, a better way of putting it is which is more cost-effective, making hemp-derived THC beverages or marijuana-derived THC beverages?
Depends on the tax structure. So the real hitch in the giddy up is that, like, in California, to grow cannabis, so anything that's going to grow with more than 0.3% THC, you're paying almost 78% effective taxes by the time it gets to the consumer's hands. Inside of hemp, we've got sales tax and that's it. Now we're asking to have more taxation in the category. So in Minnesota, we wrote in a 10% hemp line item that's assessed at the retailer, and that's what we're putting in there. But because of the lower regulation, we're just growing an agricultural commodity, and the lower taxation, we've got a lot more room to play. We don't have the 280E exposure snafu that gets everybody inside of cannabis. Now, granted, that would go away with federal legalization, but I think what we'll see is descheduling first, and who knows what that does to 280E. There's a lot of theories on it, but I think in practice, the government wants to get taxes out of everybody. We got to make it easier to have people doing real business in a cost-effective way.
Gotcha. So this can be a long-term viable route, hemp-derived, not just a temporary avenue to make it to the shelf.
I think what we've created inside of this industry is a path to federal legalization for all of cannabis. And I see this as us writing a template that becomes federal legalization. We'll pressure everybody.
That's a great point, Jordan, because I was kind of thinking the same thing. I was like, it seems expensive to derive THC from hemp because it's so low in THC, but real THC, whatever you want to call it, is taxed so high in the states where it's legal, but it's cheaper, I would think, to get real THC out of a plant because it doesn't. I don't really know the science. I'm pretending like I know because I look like a shepherd. But here's my point. I think that THC beverages are going to be a big play, a big category within the beverage industry. And the reason is because most of the states, if not all of them, they've decriminalized pot at the same time that they've made it legal. And so it's still easy to get illegal weed, but it's easy to get it in smoke format. No illicit people are going to have the technology and the money to infuse it into beverages. And so that has to be legal. And I think that's what differentiates it from smoking flower. Am I crazy there?
No, I think you're absolutely spot on. And one of the things we don't talk enough about is that inside of a joint, a 1 gram joint at 20% THC is 200 milligrams of THC. We put 5 milligrams in our drinks.
Yeah,
so,
it's so strong. I mean, you take one hit off of a joint these days and you can't even speak the English language or any language.
Well, you got to practice more.
I mean, yeah.
No, Harry's got a pretty high tolerance. So. I took a lick of one of his gummies once and I was shrinking for
quit
hours.
licking my gummies. I don't like it when you get your nose into my gummies. You stay away. She's got such a low tolerance. She sniffs the bag of gummies and she gets high.
Well, I mean, so there's an interesting thing that happens that we don't talk enough about in the industry. With edibles, you actually get hydroxy 11 THC because you're processing delta 9 THC through your liver, and it hits you about 2 to 3 times harder than delta 9 THC does. Now, what we did with our drinks is we set it up so delta 9 THC goes through the lining of your mouth and straight into your bloodstream. We're bypassing your stomach and your liver. But that's the core technology. That's how we process our THC. We make it into nanofibers and it goes right through the lining of your mouth.
That's good because I don't need anything else going through my liver.
Through his liver, no.
It's just this giant bloated organ that just sits here and it just makes me top heavy. It's hard for me to get around.
Well, Harry, we're going to mail you some drinks. We're going to save your liver.
Okay,
Yeah.
Good.
Ted, I want to ask you as a consumer, so little story time. So we talked with the guys from Hohenstein's, last week or 2 weeks ago, and they told me about Trail Magic. And you guys may be doing this too, but they will ship nationally to anyone. Now, I'm guessing that's legal, but I was like, I don't know if this is true. Is this true? Let me go check and, put it on the old Amex for research purposes. Trail Magic shows up at my door, but it's funny because when it showed up at my door, I didn't realize that's what it was. And I swear to you, the UPS guys were there for like 10 minutes, like shuffling around. 2 of them were at the door. And I was like, what's going on? Now, it may have been a complete coincidence. I'm almost wondering if they're like, is this legal? Should we leave it or not? But that's part 1 of the story. Part 2 of the story is, again, because I have such a low tolerance as a consumer, I took like 2 sips of this drink before I started wondering, like, is this regulated? I mean, this is the Wild West. This might, like, what if I have an adverse reaction? Like, who's overseeing this? And so, especially because the guys at Hohenstein's were saying, like, even though you said the consumer is very similar to the beer consumer, I've heard, and I guess case in point, that it is a lot more female oriented, a lot more older than you might think otherwise. And so that might be a problem for that consumer segment.
I think opportunity is a great word to use instead of problem whenever, but I'm in sales, so we just
when you're ahead of sales, of course. Yeah.
Regulation is a big deal, and we have to largely self-regulate. I actually wrote our compliance list, and I've been sharing it with other producers to say, hey, here's the FDA adverse effects line. Let's post keep out of reach of children, 21 plus strictly. We don't want to be sold to 18-year-olds. That no gray area on that, very strictly 21 plus. We need to make sure that we're doing it all the right way. Beyond that, we test every one of our cans that goes, well, not every can, we test every batch. But we get a certificate of analysis from a federally accredited lab showing that there's no residual pesticides, there's nothing harmful inside of the drink, and showing that our label claim is accurate. So plus or minus 10% is our QC spec. We will be plus or minus 10% of 5 milligrams. Yeah. I know that there's a lot of people in the space who aren't doing that right now, and we're encouraging all of them to do that. Yeah. There's plenty of drinks who have a label claim at 10 milligrams, and it'll be somewhere between 0 and 90. It's just some poor guy with an eyedropper putting medication into the can. We can't have that. We need to grow the category faster and better than what has happened over the last 6 months. But right. God, it's so young. I mean, this is still pre-dawn hours. We haven't done anything formally as an industry yet. We're starting to take these steps. We only just formed the Hemp Beverage Alliance. When I joined back in March, it was like 30 members. Now we're up to 115. We're getting more people all the time, and we're getting them to adopt these standards. And we're making it so that we're going above and beyond anything that's mandated by the state and encouraging the states to write stricter regulations around what's in the cans.
Mm-hmm. Or do you think there could be some backlash because of these guys with the eyedroppers, right? They could kind of tank the whole industry. Is that a big fear for you guys?
It's exactly what we saw in beer forever ago. Remember when the BA got together and said, hey, we got to start educating people about what acetaldehyde tastes like, what diacetyl tastes like. And these can't be acceptable parts of beer. If you've got a brew pub on the corner who puts out crappy pints, but people love them anyway, God bless them. They're doing fine. But if it's going into Safeway, it needs to be high quality or we kill the industry. And that's exactly the conversation we're having right now inside of the hemp community.
Yeah, it was like, in the early 2000s, I remember a big push from Charlie Papazian to Jim Cook at every convention is like, get a lab, just have at least one person there tasting every batch just to make sure you're not sending out oxidized beer. Mm-hmm. And this is a nascent industry. And I think you're doing it the right way, that you have an actual hemp alliance, which I didn't realize there was a hemp beverage alliance. Is that based in Washington or what?
Well, Chris Lackner heads it up. He lives in Chicago, and then the rest of us are all over the place. But They're doing really good work, and it's weirdly modeled on the BA. Right. We look to what the Brewers Association did, and we want to achieve the same things for the industry, right down to we're looking at having a Great American Hemp Fest. We're putting together our first big hemp soda sampling event, hopefully for this summer.
Oh, cool. Where will that be?
I think Minnesota. We're
of course.
Make sure it's in the summer.
Of course.
Who's gonna let this happen kind of phase. Like, I don't know. Call a band who's cool. Let's see if we can do it at one of their shows.
And wasn't Minnesota like an accident? Like
that's what they say.
Yeah, they didn't even know really what they were passing, and Minnesota's a good testing ground for this kind of stuff because nobody's going to go ape shit in Minnesota. Oh, geez. They're like, oh, geez, I took too much. No, I can't leave the house. This is a
Real
terrible.
bad.
One of
Oh,
your better
boy.
accents, Harry, actually.
I
You
know I'm doing a terrible Minnesota accent, but
No, it's one of your
It works
better
with the
ones.
hat.
yeah, that right, exactly. I'm gonna go snowmobiling later in the trails. Maybe do a little ice fishing. Nom, 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 nom. There we go.
Two questions. Picking up
Before
on
it goes
where
off
you
the
left.
rails, Jordan.
Harry, shut up.
Let me get these in.
Favorite accents?
Real quick. What is the shelf life of these products?
For effing ever, man.
Ever. Okay, that's what I thought.
An
Just
embarrassing. Well, they're sodas, so we've got a
Yeah.
little bit of potassium sorbate in there. I'm not saying I'm in love with preservatives, but man, that's really nice to be able to kick some in, and we're good for 2 years. What everyone struggles with is shelf stability on their medication. So if you're using a nano emulsion, you're going to have THC snowflakes in your can, and nobody wants that. That precipitate, that fallout is going to be problematic. We use water soluble technology. So because we achieve real water solubility, our shelf stability goes on for 2 years with no drop in medication. If you're not using that, you're going to get oxidation, all sorts of other issues. Your THC converts to CBN, which it's not harmful at all, but you go from having kind of a social euphoric high to a I need to take a nap high.
Okay. And then on regulation, Minnesota's kind of the Wild West. It seems like everyone wants to push their products in there to get on shelves at a liquor store. How are people fighting to get on the shelves? Can you pay slotting fees? Are there things that they haven't figured out yet that are kosher and bev alc?
Knows about slotting fees in this category yet, so
okay.
Yeah.
Ixnay on the outing fees.
Yeah.
Oh man, effing cat's out of the bag now.
Nobody ever thought of that.
But do you see
right now
people
it's based on
that
product quality and support and education? It's the old-fashioned way of doing it, which I absolutely love because I think it's important. When we can go in there, crack the top on your can, say, hey, this is an outstanding beverage that we think your customers are going to really enjoy. Let's educate your staff. Let's get appropriate signage up inside of your store, and let's mount a public education campaign. So we're going to target some marketing up here and just really roll up our sleeves and do it right.
And how are you?
Social media. You ever heard of that? You ever heard of social media, Jordan?
Yeah, time or two.
Yeah, we get flagged on social media still a lot because they're like, you're selling drugs. And we're like, so?
Yeah. Well, what are those laws like, right? I mean, federally, if this is legal, shouldn't you be able to market however you like? If you wanted to put a TV commercial, could you?
It's not legal federally, Jen.
Well,
hemp is.
Hemp is federally legal. That's exactly what Ted's saying.
Oh my gosh, you're right again.
Yeah, but the rules come in. So then Meta will come back and say, well, it's THC and THC is THC. You can't be selling that on here. And then I just get hit with a bunch of ads for ecstasy from like corner drug.
How are you providing data? Have Circana or Nielsen, have any of those big data firms started to track any of these beverages? And how do you go to the retailer and say, look, is it just based on wholesaler sales, or how are you doing that?
Right now it's based on shipments. Look at how much we shipped. This is amazing. What the hell's a depletion? That's like months down the road.
It's called pipe fill.
It's very, very early, and it's based on consumer demand and what people think they can make happen. Getting into Total Wine was huge. Total is turning on Tennessee as we speak. Wow. So that'll be their second state to turn on. And that lends a lot of legitimacy to it. We can say, look, there's a lot of excitement. We've got data from some retailers like Top 10 Liquors in Minnesota. They're headed towards 10% of their product mix in THC drinks. Mm-hmm. That's a huge number. And sharing numbers like that has been very exciting. And then we've got market analysis. So the potentials coming out of Whitney Analytics Group, no relation to me, but Bo Whitney does fantastic work looking at what's possible inside of a category based on the broad market trends. And he's predicting that cannabinoid drinks are going to be heading for $40 billion within 5 years.
Yeah.
Now, that's
bigger than craft,
optimistic.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I saw his report that said hemp-derived cannabinoids are, I think, 28 billion in 2022. Is that for real?
Well, there's a lot of asterisks on that because there's a lot of nutraceuticals and there's stuff that hemp goes into that isn't necessarily D9 drinks.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a real number and it's a massive industry. I was just out at MJ BizCon in Vegas and we actually had hemp get-togethers. Like it was really cool to see the industry come this far, this fast. And this is just the beginning of it. I mean, Rexis is doing production for 3Chi, who sponsored Kyle Busch's #8 NASCAR this year, and they just put $25 million into Barstool Sports. These are major marketing pushes inside of a brand new category. For me, this is fairly unprecedented. Even in beer, to have someone spend $50 million on advertising, that's almost unheard of.
Oh yeah, I mean that's AB territory.
Yep, that's a Super Bowl ad right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one more from me. Do you think that, to the point of all those giant dollars and Harry saying that's AB territory, do you think in 5 years CPG will own this category, like big CPG?
I think it'll be faster than that.
Wow.
If we get the right legislative wins, I'll throw that caveat in there. We need to keep legislators very positive on the category. The more education we do, the better for everybody. Producers need to be good actors in the space, and if that continues, I think there's no cap on our growth. But if all those stars align, absolutely. I mean, we're going to see big folks coming into the space very, very quickly, and I think we can still preserve the idea of craft, variety, access to market, all those things. We need to be mindful with how we take every step.
And I agree with that. And to me, the chokehold is retail, because right now there's this perception that, oh, it's only sold in dispensaries, and getting the big retailers to come on board, like an HEB, for instance, or Kroger. That's when the big boys on the producer side, I think, will wake up and get in. The other thing is how it's structured federally. If the feds decide to unschedule THC and create a regulatory framework, will it mirror the alcohol business? In other words, will they, A, leave it to the states, which they probably will since the states have already done it, and B, create kind of a 3-tier system so that the supply chain is regulated along the way. And if it is, I think if it is structured like that, it would give a place at the table for smaller producers like craft, because let's be honest, the craft brewers won't tell you this, but the reason they are successful is because there is a mandated 3-tier system and the distributors have independence to take on whoever they want. Otherwise, we just have a 2-distributor system, AB and Miller Coors or Constellation, and nobody else would get access to market. That's my rant. What are your thoughts on that?
I was looking for the Reyes logo behind you when you said
it. Yeah, I know, right?
Little crest.
NBWA logo.
Yeah.
I think that the 3-tier system is important because it's very inefficient to ship your own drinks. Jen, you talked about shipping to everybody's houses. Yeah, that's absolutely happening because people had to have that path to market. We looked at doing it early on, and I told my team, I'd rather buy pallets than postage. It doesn't make a lot of sense for us. It's really inefficient. Let's find a better path to market because we just don't have the bandwidth to do this direct to consumer thing. And we'll see that continue. It's kind of like what we saw in wine. Wine built backwards into direct to consumer, but it's never been a huge play for them. Their tasting room sales are very important to most wineries. And then distributor access is critical if you want to be relevant nationally, if you want to be relevant beyond your own tasting room. And nothing's going to change that fact. We need to have access to national accounts. We need to have access to everybody in the state, and that's going to happen through distributors. Further, we need to have a good collection of excise taxes. And I think that really mandates that 3-tier system. If distributors are assessing the taxes, that's a good place for them to be too. And I'd like to keep that going. And I think franchise law plays into that as well. We need to bring, God, I can't believe I'm advocating for franchise law. I think it's important because it imparts brand value for the brands. And I've always been a huge advocate of, if you have a brand, it is inherently valuable, sell it to the distributor. Don't let them get it for free. Make it so it is valuable. Tell them, hey, we've got authorization in Kroger. I want $6 million when we come in, then we don't need another taste of it. And if you sell us to Reyes for 20 million, far out. That's great. We already got our cut and we're fine.
I love that. I'd rather buy pallets than postage. Ted, that is fantastic. I'm using that. I'm taking it, I'm appropriating it, and I'm going to start using that in my what? Speeches? I don't give speeches much. But I mean, that is such a great way of putting it. Pallets over postage. And I would say probably modified franchise law where you can move if you want to, but somebody gets paid. fair market value instead
Mhm.
of being married to a distributor for, the rest of eternity.
Yep. Or stuck or killed in them. I mean, getting scuttled at
Right.
distributors, everyone's worst nightmare. Make it so it can't happen.
Right. Just pay them.
Or have a non-performance clause and say, hey, if we go this low, we get to walk and everyone's happy. That's fine. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Right.
Ted, we didn't even talk about the beverages themselves. And can you kind of briefly share what your lead flavors are?
Yeah, so we started off with 4 SKUs. We did a sour grape soda that's straight up grape Fanta. We did orange pop, and we wanted to taste exactly like a Crush from 1987. We did an almost sugar-free grapefruit that's modeled off of Ting from the islands. Our CEO is from the Virgin Islands.
Oh.
And we did a sugar-free lemonade. And a lot of that is just seeing where consumers are going to go. Do they want something that's full flavored and has a little more sugar in it? Do they want to go low sugar? And so far, the spectrum seems to be playing out. Our 2 lead flavors are orange and grape, but the other flavors are doing just fine. In coastal markets, the low sugar plays well. In interior markets, the high sugar has been very well received.
Any idea because I know Minnesota has a pretty healthy on-premise segment for these types of beverages, or it's starting to develop, rather, maybe not healthy yet. But, when people go out, let's say it's a 5%. How many do you drink? Like 2, probably?
So that's another thing that's core to our tech. One of the reasons we exist as a company is that we can turn on our medication very quickly. So you feel the effects from our soda within 10 minutes, and then it's mostly out of your system within 45. And that becomes because of that nanofiber. It's going through the lining of your mouth, processed by your system very quickly and back out. Now, you're still going to pee dirty, so you don't get out of your drug test for free. But you can intuitively dose your experience during your night. You can stack them up. If you drink 5 really fast, you're going to be real high. If you spread them out by 15 or 20 minutes, you can kind of maintain your buzz through the night. And we want it to be analogous to drinking alcohol. So it should be about the same as having a 5% alcohol beer for every drink that you have. And we want it to be intuitive. So people feel that intoxication, they understand how to dose it, and they can proceed without ordering 6 large pizzas and regretting everything the next morning.
Hey, listen, there's nothing to regret about that.
Judgment.
Just, and when are you going to have it so that you can have an app and you can just turn on your high and turn it off when you want to in your body?
3 weeks. 5,
Okay.
maybe? We'll see.
Okay. I'm going to call Sam Bankman-Fried in prison and see what he can gin up. That guy's he's a genius. I don't care what anybody says. I'm team Sam.
Well, I want to send you guys drinks so you can see how the drinks stack. We purposefully try to overdose ourselves to see what it does. And a lot of it is just, this is very new tech, and we're really proud of the fact that this is something that's very consistent. So it doesn't hit you different every time. You know that it's going to be an hour of chill in every can, and just that.
Did Rexis start, because it's a biotech company, right? Did it start in this space, or did it start? Okay.
Originally, our CEO's company and the core technology was around making vitamins more bioavailable. And then he figured out that the tech works with weed, it works with mushrooms, and it works with caffeine and a bunch of other stuff. But the weed, mushrooms, and caffeine, he was like, well, there's probably something there. People love weed, mushrooms, and caffeine.
Psilocybin.
Yes.
Thank you, Jordan.
Fun mushroom.
That's going to be the next frontier. Hell, it's legal in Oregon.
Yeah, well, it works with functional mushrooms too, so psilocybin included. But we also apply our tech to ashwagandha, turkey tail, reishi. We've done really fantastic work with a couple groups who are promoting nootropics to help promote brain health.
What is rabbit tail? What is turkey feather?
It's another mushroom that has a lot of neuroprotective qualities.
So y'all produce everything. Can there be a gold rush in this space? How quickly can somebody turn on a production facility? Can brewers add this type of production to their existing facilities, or is this just kind of a whole different ball game?
The ABC has been really clear about no crossing lanes. So cannabinoids going into alcohol, they're really strict about. That being said, production facilities are looking at ways to produce this. So, if a big brewer has a lot of excess capacity on their packaging line, can they package cannabinoid drinks if they're not producing it in the brew house? Like where does that line exist? And I would say it's kind of a gray area right now, but gray areas get less gray all the time. It's leaning towards. It looks like the powers that be in various states are going to lean towards allowing brewers to produce this. In fact, Surly has done an awful lot of production inside of this space. There have been some brewers who have put up entirely different packaging halls so they can package cannabinoid drinks. And I thought that was a cool move too.
It kind of reminds me of in the old days when wine and spirits couldn't be sold in the same warehouse as beer in some states. They would just run literally a chain link fence through the middle of the warehouse. Just put up a chain link fence.
Oh, I worked with a guy in Illinois that had a piece of masking tape down the middle of the warehouse. Right. That side of the masking tape, that's all beer.
It's funny.
Well, it's just how arbitrary everything is.
And I love it. The more arbitrary the laws are, the more money everybody makes. I've always said that. And, let it be patchwork. I know, you know why? Because it keeps the big producers at bay. It can't be mass produced and sent everywhere. We got to have individual laws and plus people think differently. I guarantee you the people in Utah think differently about this than the people on the Jersey Shore. And so, you gotta, I think that's why the feds are smart by leaving stuff like this to the states. But, who knows what they'll do. Well, good. Well, this has been a fascinating podcast. I'm glad I was able to get my tech fixed and jump on.
Well done.
And, yeah.
I like that you're podcasting from a humidor too. It's a cool
always. I just smoke weed in here all day, just puffing on it. Well, good. Well, thank you, Ted, for being on BeerNet Radio. This is the podcast where all your dreams come true. I hope some of your dreams have already come true. And
this was one of my dreams. I get to check this off the list.
Yeah,
I've been on your podcast for years.
Good. Well,
start a whole company to do it.
I wish that were true, but listen,
we'll take it.
I want you to have a good holiday. I think you're at the beginning of a great new category, and ship me some.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll get those out in the mail. We've got tons of fun stuff to play with.
Nice.
All right, cool.
Sweet.
All right. Well, thank you. And you guys, everybody have a good weekend, and we'll see you next week on BeerNet Radio.
Cheers.
Take care, Harry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jen.
Thanks.
Cheers, everybody.